But what do you think about when you think about living within your means? No fun, right? Cut back, right? Sacrifice. See, budgeting sucks primarily because budgeting creates a scarcity mindset. It's about reductionist thinking, and no one shrinks their way to wealth. The good news here is I'm not going to ask you to save and scrimp and sacrifice and delay and defer, and this isn't called the long haul. Like, when people in finance say the long haul, when does that actually end, by the way? I think when you die, right? And it sounds like the worst CrossFit workout in history, the long haul. Like, you never want to get involved in that kind of a thing. I'm also not calling this live within your means, because I'm sure you've heard that before, right? Have you maybe even given that advice? No, not you, someone else you know, right? But what do you think about when you think about living within your means? No fun, right? Cut back, right? Sacrifice. See, budgeting sucks primarily because budgeting creates a scarcity mindset. It's about reductionist thinking, and no one shrinks their way to wealth. That's the bottom line. No one shrinks their way to wealth. Wealth is, oh, yeah, you can clap. Yeah, unexpected but appreciated. Thank you. And if you laugh at my jokes, it's just going to encourage me to keep joking around. But the good news, I'm still going to make sure I give you actionable items you can put on the ground within 24 hours to keep more of your money. So this isn't about you saving for the rainy day or for the future. This is about immediately finding cash for your business so you can make a bigger impact, because living within your means, there's 3 ways to do it. The first way is to budget, and if you're a train wreck, you probably should do that. But the other 2 ways are a lot more fun, and they're a lot more impactful. The second way is to be more efficient. What I mean by efficient, it comes with 4 I's, all right? Efficiency, the first I is the IRS. 93% of business owners overpay on their taxes. 93%. So I think you should tip like wait staff and maybe your Lyft drivers, but not the government. See, I know you love everything that's going on there right now and feel like they're using the money very effectively, but you can instead keep it and use it how you want. All right? So I'm going to give you a framework of the 2 tax traps to avoid and the 3 things to do to be more successful. And I'm going to have you actually write down some of the tax savings today so that you can immediately start doing it. Because if you haven't done some of this, you could do it before the end of the year and keep a lot more money. I'll give you the strategy. There was one strategy that saved Pete $67,000. I actually was with him on Friday night. I had my own 3-day workshop going on. And even though I just finished presenting, I drove up and hung out with him because he was in Park City, Utah. And he said, you know what, you're going to, I love these people. Just go ahead and share my story. Usually it's highly confidential. We can't share these kind of things. I was like, anything you want me to leave out? He said no. So I'm just going to tell you a lot of those things so that we have an actual case study. And the cool thing is, when I first met him, candidly, we weren't going to take him into our program. I didn't think he was ready. But now, I would have been embarrassed if I hadn't, because he's just absolutely crushing it. Because a lot of it was, we found the money for him to make the transition from the corporate world into his own business. And second, when he had economic independence, which economic independence is defined this way: when you have enough recurring revenue. And I use the word recurring revenue, not passive income, because passive income is a misnomer. There's nothing in life that's completely passive. If you're passive in your business, how does your business go? I tried it once in my marriage. Didn't work out for that day. You know? Just gonna be really passive about it, babe. She's like, I will kick your ass. And I was like, she's fierce. She's fierce. So, yeah. So I'm talking recurring revenue. Money that comes in, whether you show up to do something the next day, is recurring revenue. That means you still have to monitor it, to maintain it, and it does require stewardship or management. So manage, maintain, and monitor so it continues to come in. But it doesn't mean that it takes day by day or even week by week. Sometimes it's maybe month by month. When that recurring revenue is great enough from 2 factors. Number 1, your investments. And number 2, your entrepreneurial income. And what I mean by entrepreneurial income is when you're not operating as a technician, but instead when you have a team that can do things and the money still comes in. And look, I spent 2 months in Italy this summer. They did a workshop without me. Money came in while I was sipping on Aperol spritzers, swimming in a pool, and having 4-hour dinners, and eating, by the way, whatever I wanted in Italy, because somehow you don't gain weight when you eat pizza in Italy, so I just took advantage of that on a daily basis. And gelato, too. Gelato is really good if you're ever over there. I highly recommend it. But when that money can come in with you just doing minimal maintenance, which I did 5 half days of calls over the 2 months. One of those half days is how I ended up on this stage. That was one of my few calls that I did, and I'm excited to be here with you today. But recurring revenue is that money that still shows up when there's other people supporting your vision and what you're up to, right? So when enough of that comes in to cover your lifestyle expenses, you're economically independent. That is fundamentally different than financially free. Financial freedom is when money's no longer the primary reason or excuse why you do or don't do something. Financial freedom is a state of mind. Economic independence is a state of having. A state of mind where money's no longer the primary reason or excuse. It's still a consideration, but not the primary consideration. That's financial freedom. When you get to work because it's a choice. When you do the things that you want because you have that opportunity, because you're not worried about, are you going to be okay financially? See, that's when you can swing for the fences in your business and represent your clients at the highest level when you're economically independent. And I'm not here to try to convince you to save 10% of your income and try to earn 10% in a stock market that you don't control and then wait for 30 years so that one day, someday you can retire. I want you to retire from the things that you hate doing now so that you can do things that you're really impactful with and that you can earn a lot more money, because the third way to live your means is to expand your means. That's the game changer right there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes. Small applause, but I'll still take that, even. It's fine. It's fine. Don't mean to pander. So the first I is the IRS. We're going to get that money back for you, so it helps you towards economic independence. The second I is interest. The second I is interest. If you have more than one loan, you have an 80% chance you're overpaying your interest because of 4 C's. The first C is not having the right credit score. The right credit score is 780 or above. I always tell my wife has an 800-some score, and she brags about it, and I'm like, it doesn't matter, 780, 800. Who's comparing? And she's like, you're the financial guy, and I have a better credit score than you. Because women are more responsible people than men, right? So I get it. I understand. Plus, when they see me, they have a discount because of my hair. I actually shaved a few of my credit points when they saw it, you know? But that's all right, because my wife likes it. So the thing is, the first C is credit. The second C is collateral. So if you had a paid-off car, for example, but then you had a credit card, if you refinance that car, which, yes, you can refinance a car. Most people know you can refinance a home, but don't think about it with a car. You might be able to get a 1.9% or 2.9% loan and then maybe pay off a 6% loan. By the way, if you could buy something for $3 and sell it for $6, what percentage markup is that? 100%, right? So if you could get a 3% loan and pay off a 6% loan, what's the rate of return? It's not 3%. That's a 100% improvement. That's what I'm looking for. Where can I get you 100% returns without risk? And I'll keep going on what the other C's are, and I'll keep going on the 4 I's. Don't worry. I know there's a lot going on here, and some of you guys are panicked that I'm going to forget those things, and you can raise your hand. But I do want to kind of tell you a story. See, I know. So I started in financial services in 1998. The reason that happened is when I was 15, I started my first business. I spent a lot of time naming that business. It was called Garrett Gunderson's Car Care. And I detailed cars. And by the way, I became a speaker pretty quick because I made $600 net income. And then I went and spoke at the Rural Young Entrepreneur for the SIFE organization, which was the Students in Free Enterprise. And in a small talk, I made $500. And my business only made $600. And I thought I could continue scrubbing tar and bugs. Or I could go and teach people things. That sounds like a much better deal. But the next year, I actually won for the state of Utah for 30 and under, and it came with $5,000. So coming from a small coal mining town, I was actually on the plane flying here last night watching the show John Oliver, and Mike Marasco that I went to school with was on John Oliver because I watched something on coal because I'm a coal miner's son. My grandfathers were coal miners. As a matter of fact, my great-grandfather was a coal miner. because he lived in Italy 90 years ago, had a fishing business, and the mob started to come in and tax him in Sicily. So he left his family for 7 freaking years. Don't mind me, just taking a little step there. For 7 years, he didn't see his wife, and she was pregnant, so he saw his daughter at 7 years old for the first time because he didn't have the financial means and wanted to create a better life. That'll be important. I'm going to bring that back around to exactly why I'm here today and why I do what I do. But when I got this $5,000, I wanted to invest it because I wanted to get out of the small, crappy coal mining town. And I guess I'm admitting that I was a bit nerdy at that point, right? Because what kid at 16 or 17 goes, I've got this money, I want to invest it. But see, the problem with trying to invest when you're 16 or 17 is that my mom's money management method came from Italy. It was called Folgers coffee cans, and you put the cash in it in the cellar. And so when I said, hey, I want to invest, she's like, no, I'm not going to sign off as your custodian. So when I finally turned 18 and I had this money, I bought the very first thing that someone called an investment, which they told me it was going to earn 18% for the next 40 years, and off a mere $70 a month, I was going to be a multimillionaire. Who thinks that that is actually going to work out, by the way? Fortunately, I was in Professor Kim Kraft's class. Just saw him. I spoke at my university last year, and he still remembered me because I asked him so many questions. I did this thesis on econometrics, once again showing that I'm a bit of a nerd, and found out that not only did it have a 0% chance of doing that, it had a 98.7% chance of failing. So that's where curiosity got me. Fortunately, I'd only lost $210. That's an inexpensive tuition at that time. But that's when I started to go out and ask the people that I knew that were wealthiest what to do with money. The problem with that is sometimes people are wealthy not because they're good at managing money, they're just good at making money. And you're not necessarily wealthy if you make a lot of money, if you spend more than what you make. Like, I've had people in my workshops that everybody's so excited about because they're doing $100 million of revenue. Then when I talk to them on the break, I'm like, so tell me about your business growth. They're like, we've grown so much. 40 million of revenue over the last 3 years. I'm like, how much more did you take home? They're like, well, I didn't actually take any more home. So you've increased your revenue through complexity, through hiring, through chaos. Is your life better or worse? Actually, it's a lot worse because we're having problems, customers aren't as happy, all this kind of stuff. So I don't want people to get caught up with the seduction and sexiness of revenue alone. Yes, we want to have that. It's not just what you make, it's what you keep. I'm here to immediately improve your bottom line without having to work harder. I want it through intelligence and information, and I'm telling the story about when I went out and went to invest the money, because what I figured out in the first 2 years is there's something called luck in the world of finance, and there's something called skill, and sometimes people can't differentiate between the two. And I was seen, because it was a small community, as financial Einstein. This crowd probably remembers Doogie Howser. That's what they said. You're like the Doogie Howser of finance. And I was in 98 and 99, because everyone that put money in the market went up. So I had them cash in their Folgers coffee cans into these, or their double E bonds, and they thought I was genius until the year 2000 came. And when you think about it, I was 19 years old, so most of my clients were like mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, uncles and aunts. So all of a sudden, the year 2000, when the market went down, family reunions became even more awkward than before. Because now they're like, oh, it's a nice car you've got there. Wonder how you bought that, So fortunately, I was still in school, and I was a business senator, and there was a guy by the name of Stephen Harrop who managed $5 billion in municipal bonds and was the #1 by all categories. Kiplinger, Smart Money, Lipper, #1 across categories. But he decided when he turned 50 years old, he was going to retire from that and become a professor as a pay-it-forward, connect with the young generation, because people really helped him in his life to get to that point. So I met him before anyone else did at the school, and I was intelligent enough to say, what is it that he's looking for that he doesn't have? And he had actually gotten a little bit pudgy during his time of work. He was still pretty thin, but it was kind of like, there was no abs anywhere to be seen, and he wanted to get back in shape, and I like to work out, so I started playing racquetball with him. I started working out with him. I started talking to him, and so when the market started to go down in the year 2000, I actually started to tell him, hey, my clients are losing money, what should I do? And I remember sitting down over frozen yogurt, because that's the best way to end a workout. But we're sitting there talking, he's like, you need to go and tell everyone What's really happening that you've just handed the money off to managers you've never met, in stocks that you don't even know other than the top 10 stocks that are being held, that there is no exit strategy, and that buy, hold, and pray isn't a good investment philosophy, right? And so I know this might be coming as a shock to you, but I was a little bit arrogant at the time. I don't know why that was funny, but I had to go confront everyone and tell them I didn't know what I was doing. And it was a transformative moment of my life, because all but one got completely out of the market by May of 2000. If you remember that time, we had a downturn in 2001 and 2002, so there were 3 negative years, and they only had to participate in 2.5 of those 3 negative years, all but one, which was my buddy who's a dentist now, but he was my roommate. I had a rental that I rented out to him, and I used to get the Wall Street Journal as an 18-year-old, admitting once again that I'm a nerd. And he used to read it, and there was a section in there where monkeys would throw darts at a stock board, and then they would see how many monkeys were doing better than the fund managers. And so I would come home from school, and he'd be reading it. It's like, looks like my dad should get the monkey to start managing his money. You know, he's just, what is a friend for other than to harp on you and tease you? But this is a guy who had checks in his desk that had never been cashed as a business owner, and he's like the millionaire next door. Have anyone read that book? Okay, by the way, if you haven't read the book, a little spoiler alert. That book is, if you're willing to live like Ebenezer Scrooge before the Epiphany, you too can die really wealthy, miserable, and then your kids will blow the money within 3 years. That's basically that path. And that was one of the early financial books that I read, so I'm still kind of lucky to be married, because I remember when we first got married, I told my wife, I was like, hey, your dad offered that we could live in the basement. She's like, I'm offering that we could just be friends. It's like, well. But even my small-mindedness at that time, because I thought I was going to save myself rich and pinch pennies till I had blisters on my fingers, right? Still that kind of coffee can management system. I was like, all right, I'm going to give you $400 a month budget for our housing. And she, in the way that only my wife, Carrie, can do, she's like, that sounds great. And then she went out and showed me that there's actually a ghetto in Utah. I didn't know, but we found it. And then I upped the budget just a little bit, right? So all this to be said, a long story, the point is, at the point where they started losing money and I said, get your money out and let me either figure out something else or go find someone else, all of them but one stayed with me. I asked a different question in finance at that moment. And my question, I whispered it because I don't think you're allowed to say it out loud, is I said, what's guaranteed? What's guaranteed in the world of finance?